Did I finally get what I've been whining for? A power shift? Maybe. We'll get to that soon. But first, I just want to reiterate why so many people were upset with the twist and why it is only good to form big alliances. It's because the days leading up to this last eviction, the dynamics within the house were getting really messy. We had the girls thing going on with all the girls, but there's clearly the 4 girls at the top. We had some of the guys trying to form their own thing. We had the in-betweens with the whole Monty and Kyle and Michael and Nicole, Amira and Alyssa alliance. We had the outsiders thing forming with Kyle, Michael, Brittany, possibly bringing in Taylor, and other little pockets of connections to Joe and some of the guys. And we had Amira starting to be exposed. Now, up to this point, Amira and Nicole have kind of been running the game, mostly because they push their agendas the hardest. It's not like this great gameplay, but since they're pushing their agendas the hardest, they've kind of been getting their way. And now with Turner as HOH, who is basically furniture, old, stank, moldy furniture, they were looking like they were able to maybe push him over as well. But luckily, Joe, of all people, became the kind of player that I enjoyed to watch. Joe has also been on the bottom along with Turner and Pooch over this past week. Turner was the last to find out about that the tide had turned against Pooch, and Pooch was the one that was going to be voted out. But then Joe was kind of like the one right before that to find out as well. So Joe was one of the last people to find out that Pooch was being voted out. So Joe, unlike Turner, recognizes that, hey, he's really at the bottom and he needs to figure things out. And you would think up to this point that Joe would be a smart person. He's a lawyer and all that. But he has seemed pretty lost and not that smart in the game. However, in the wee hours of the morning, Joe pieced everything together thanks to Amira. Now, last week Amira was being controlling, really trying to make sure the votes were staying the same, and Joe had caught on to this, that Amira was doing all of this pushing. Also, apparently, after Turner had won HOH, Amira was freaking out. Amira had the bubble guts and maybe was also puking, according to Joe. And she seemed like she was worried that she was going to be put up because Turner was not the HOH. So Joe pieced everything together that maybe Amira is one of the people running the game. Maybe Amira is the one that turned the tide against Pooch last week, and this was the plan from all the girls, and he's talking to this with Kyle and Monty. Now, we'll get to Monty in a while. Monty and Turner still dumb as hell in my book, but Joe and Kyle really are the ones changing the tide this week, and I'm not super convinced that Kyle needs to do this because, like I've been saying, Kyle is the player with the best social game in this house. He has a lot of connections. He's one of the people I think that could have played the middle going forward. But he seems like he wants to jump on board with this power shift. And I don't think that would necessarily be bad for his game, but it's going to make him need to change up his game because it's going to grow his target to where he has been so far. And it could hurt some of the connections he does have in the game. But they have decided that they are going to maybe blindside the girls this week and push for Amira to be the one to go home and bring in these outsiders that the Girls Alliance has failed to bring in. That being, well, they haven't failed to bring in Michael, but they want to bring in Michael and Brittany and Taylor because this is how the game should be played. This is what I've been talking about for 2 weeks now, why Big Brother never has these kind of players, but thankfully Joe actually has decided to push for this power shift. Joe is the one pushing this power shift because it benefits his game, because he was on the very bottom last week along with Pooch and Turner. And Turner, too dumb to think about any of this, even though he was HOH. He was just in the room listening to all this going down. And Monty, who is shit for brains, finally, after 2 weeks may realize, hey, maybe Taylor was telling the truth about Paloma and there was this whole girls thing. I don't know how he just came to this revelation today when just last week Nicole and Amira were pushing the fuck out of him to do what they wanted to do. So I think, once again, Monty and Turner, not good at this game. The fact that it took Joe just a few days to figure out everything that was going on in the house with the Girls Alliance, and it took Monty just 2 weeks. It took Monty 2 whole weeks to figure out that Taylor was actually telling him the truth this whole time, and he joined in on all the shit that turned against her. So it looks like we could be on the verge of a power shift. The veto picks will go to this as well. Amira is the target. And that's honestly a big target because her and Nicole, I just said yesterday, other than Kyle and Michael, I feel like they have the best odds of winning the game, mostly because they've been the ones pushing their agenda the hardest. And it seemed as like the big alliance that was going to form this week was going to be them kind of at the top of it, with the alliance that already kind of formed, with even though it was mostly the whole house. So Amira, not that great a strategy, to be honest. I think I always said Nicole might be slightly better, but I still think this is a huge move because if Amira goes this week, it's going to fuck up a lot of people's games because of their connection to Amira and because Amira's been kind of pushing them to do a lot of things. The other possibilities they were discussing, either getting out Alyssa or Indy as well, that would not be as big of a move, however. That would completely change the dynamics. Kyle playing the shit out of Alyssa, who's still after Kyle, and Kyle keeps rejecting her, and she keeps giving Kyle information. And I do find it funny that Amira has been trying to control a lot of other people's votes and what they were doing, but she never tried to do that to Alyssa, and Alyssa's the one that spilled some shit to Kyle. So Alyssa, if Amira goes this week, Alyssa was a key factor in making this happen because Alyssa is so terrible at this game. She's only concerned about getting with Kyle. She thinks she's on Love Island. She's one of those. Before this, the entire house was trying to isolate Taylor again because that's just what the theme of the season has been. So luckily we get this revelation. Because even outside of the problematic nature of which the isolation was happening, take that out of it even. On a strictly game level, that's terrible fucking gameplay. Because the whole house cannot be one big alliance. So why would the entire house isolate a player and not try to pick that player up? That is why Joe and Kyle having this discussion, realizing why Taylor's on the outs and wanting to bring her in, is actually a giant move in the game. And alongside with Michael and Brittany, this also very much benefits Kyle if this all happens, because Kyle did have that little outsider thing happening with those two. They need to get to Taylor first before Joe or Monty, although I feel like Joe already got to Taylor. Joe's been saying since Turner won HOH, he's been trying to help Taylor out. So Joe went up huge in my book over these past couple days. I think Joe is showing a knack for the game, a knack for adjusting his game, creating this power shift that benefits him the most. It benefits Turner too, but Turner's so oblivious as furniture that I don't know if it really helps him. I guess it benefits Brittany too. I still don't like players like Brittany who know that they're on the bottom but do nothing but whine about it and try and fit in with the majority. That's awful gameplay. Brittany sucks at this game. She talks too much. I don't like Brittany. I'm pretty tired of her. But she might be brought into this next big alliance. So the twist definitely helps big alliances be made. It seems like we might be getting a different big alliance than expected if all goes to plan for Joe and Kyle, and then Monty and Turner as well. By bringing in Kyle, Brittany, and Taylor to form that 7, I guess it could pretty much split the house as well, which I guess would be one of the best case scenarios. A split house can be fun. I prefer more fluid gameplay than a split house, which is what we were kind of on the verge of almost having before this twist, and it's why I like Survivor Season so much, because they are more fluid in the gameplay, more maneuvering to go on. But a split house would also probably be entertaining. So anyway, the plan now is to get somebody to win the veto to take Michael and Brittany off the block, and they would put up Amira and her duo of Terrence. Terrence still the biggest goat in this game. If Terrence would be the person to bring to the end to get the easy win against the goat. So Amira would be the clear target if they are able to pull this off. The veto draw went in their favor because the veto is Turner and Jasmine because they're a duo, and then Michael and Brittany because they're on the block, and Nicole and Taylor. So very interesting to see what will come of this. At least we must all thank Joe for at least making this season more entertaining. This is the first time in 2.5 weeks that I actually feel like the gameplay has leveled up from basic and bad.